This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
Welcome to the Elevate Construction Podcast, where we focus on topics that are not typically discussed and that people usually run away from. My name is Jason Schroeder, and today's podcast is about delegation. Why listen today? Do you want to learn how to effectively delegate? Have you heard to delegate and been told that this is a key leadership principle but don't quite yet have an implementation technique? Have you heard things like, I just let them do their own thing? But you have seen that that doesn't really produce results? Are you too busy and you feel like you can't give anything up and you have to do everything yourself? Well, if any of these things appeal to you in the slightest, then you'll want to listen to today's content. We have a wonderful podcast for you today. Please stay with us. So here's a quote. No person will make a great business who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit. And that's by Carnegie. Let me say that again. No person will make a great business or a great leader or a great role or a great team player or a great whatever you want to do who wants to do it all himself or herself or get all the credit. And that's by Carnegie. So the principle here is if we want to maximize our effectiveness, we need to start doing the things that only we can do and should do and will do. And we need to stop doing the things that others can do and will do and should do. That's basically the principle. Now, if that rubs you a little bit the wrong way, you're probably one of those persons that's a really hard worker. You were taught from an early age to go work harder than everyone else. You were taught to work hard, put your shoulder to the wheel and go do your best and that success would follow. And I think that you were taught right. But what got you to where you are now will not get you to where you want to go. Leaders really have to start doing the things that only they can do and should do. So here's a story. I used to work for a very large general contractor that was worldwide, and they would produce weekly leadership videos. And I remember somebody drawing a triangle on a board in one of these leadership videos, and it talked about going from the doer to the leader and how hard it was for people to step out of the doer phase of their careers and into the leader phase of their careers, where they had to delegate and rely on other people and basically act and think differently. Get out of that I have to work hard, I have to work hard to be loved, I have to work hard to add value, I have to work hard to define myself as a good employee, into the I have to plan and prepare work, I have to think, I have to create time for thinking, I have to delegate, I have to leverage others, I have to be a leader, I have to work in a team. And so I had that in my mind, and I went to be a senior superintendent on a project, and I knew that I had to go do this delegation system. I had to delegate to other people. I had to trust. I had to plan work so that others could plan and execute the work, and I had to make sure that I stayed in my station and scaled communication and provided manpower and materials and all of those other things that was in my role. So I took that a little bit too far, though, and stopped checking on certain things. In this one, and I'll just give you this example, the specifics here, because we fixed it and it ended up being all right. But I had delegated the floor flatness testing for concrete decks, for the mild reinforced concrete decks, to an assistant superintendent. And I was like, okay, they've got it. I'm good. Check that off my list. Don't have to worry about it. And I didn't worry about it again. And after the first couple of decks, those floor flatness results, that survey, the 5x5 grid with an automatic level, those stopped happening within the 24 hours after the placement and before the formwork was taken out. And I didn't know about it. I didn't check back on it. I had delegated it. I walked away. I didn't properly know what my role was with this. And so I just walked away from it, this high risk thing. And it came back to us needing that data to prove that it was formed properly, because there ended up being some deflection in the decks. Now, it was normal deflection. It was all anticipated from a design standpoint. It was designed properly. The building was placed properly, but there was deflection. And then this structure in this building, we couldn't have deflection. We couldn't have this 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch in the center of these column bays. We couldn't have that deflection because it would adversely affect the equipment that was going to be in the centers of these rooms. There were high standards for floor flatness on this particular project. And I know we've all been through the different requirements, the standards, the industry standards, the spec standards, but basically we weren't within what the owner wanted us to build, to construct. We weren't within their expectations. So we had to float the floors. And anybody that's been through this experience knows that it's an expensive process. And we went through that process and had to float these floors before flooring to provide a remarkable product for the owner. Now, when it came down to it, and the project executive, the project director, asked me what was going on, my answer was, well, I delegated that. And the answer that came back to me, appropriately so, was, Jason, you don't delegate things that are that important, or if you do delegate, you follow up. Like, it is your job to make sure that these things happen properly, and you can't just write it off. Delegation doesn't work that way. And I took that lesson to heart and really changed the way I approached leadership because, he was absolutely right. You don't delegate things like that. I have since that time learned that you don't delegate safety as a leader. You don't delegate quality. You just can't do these things because you as a leader, we as a leader, I as a leader, all of us are responsible to make sure that these things happen, and these things require follow-up. So I do want to make the point that even if you've delegated something, continuing to ask questions is all right. Continuing to follow up is good. Continuing to coach is good. People typically say, "Oh, I don't bother them. I've delegated that. I don't worry about it from then on." Or, "Hey, I want them out of my schedule. They've delegated that to me. This is my lane. I don't want people looking at what I have." Or, "I leave them alone because that's not my business." Or, "We stay in our lanes. They don't mess with me. I don't mess with them." These are things that people say that aren't accurate. When somebody's delegated something, there is no such thing as somebody staying out of their business. I always go back to this concept of if we wouldn't do it in an Olympic sports team or an Olympic team, then would we do it or should we do it at work in construction? So could you imagine somebody on an Olympic team saying, "Oh, I don't worry about what they're doing over there. They've been delegated that. I don't worry about them." Or could you imagine a professional sports team saying, "Oh, that position, I don't worry about that. I delegated that to that person. I don't need to follow up. I just do what I'm supposed to be doing." Could you imagine SEAL teams doing that? Would you want your doctor to do that? Would you want your surgeon to do that if they're operating on you? Would you want your flight captain to do that if they're flying the plane? It's interesting how sometimes we think, and I'm going to talk about me because I don't want to insult anybody. It's interesting how we think that these concepts would be okay, but then somehow they're not okay when it affects us. Like if I'm on a plane, I don't want somebody saying, "Hey, I've delegated that to the first officer or the captain, and we're not going to talk about it after that." No, I don't want that to happen because I've read books and read statistics and seen studies where countries and cultures that don't have an open and collaborative environment, they're the ones that typically crash into the side of the mountain. And when they come and forensically go pick up the recording from the black box and find out what's going on, they find out that the captain's making all the decisions and nobody else culturally felt like they could speak up. They made the wrong decisions. They crashed into the side of the mountain. And in cultures where there's short, quick bursts of communication, they usually end up recovering the plane. So I don't want my flight captain doing this. I don't want my surgeon doing this. I don't want my doctor doing this. I don't want SEAL teams doing this. I can't imagine a professional sports team doing this. And I would never be able to imagine an Olympic team delegating something and then not following up. So I sound like I'm complaining. I'm not complaining. I just do want to be very clear that we should delegate certain things. And once we delegate, there is a proper way to do it. So let me go through these concepts right now. So there is a method called the Eisenhower method that I really like. And this was used by General Eisenhower when he was the Supreme Allied Commander in World War II. He was over a lot of different things. He had to work with all of the allies. He had to work with many different leaders. He would work lots of hours, but he had almost an impossible workload. And he was successful because he used the Eisenhower method. And to explain that briefly, let me just talk about how that's set up. So if you can imagine a four-box matrix or chart where there's four boxes, two on top of the other, and on the left, it's broken up. Basically, there's a line split down the middle horizontally and a line split down the middle vertically, and there's four boxes. And the columns, the left column says urgent, the right column says not urgent, and in the rows, the top rows say important, and the bottom row says not important. So the top left box is the intersection of important and urgent. And so those things, we need to do those things as leaders. The second box on the top right box says that we need to plan the work that resides in that box. And the intersection there is the important items that are not urgent. We need to plan those. Now, if we go down to the box at the bottom left, that is the urgent and not important column. That needs to be delegated. Then the box on the bottom right is the don't do box, and that is the intersection of not urgent and not important. Now, this system doesn't work perfectly for everybody, but it is a great way to categorize our list of things or our responsibilities, the things that we need to do. Now, leaders need to be focused on the urgent and important. They need to plan the not urgent but important box. They need to delegate the not important but urgent box, and they need to stop doing the not urgent and not important box. So that may seem a little bit confusing, but you can just go Google the Eisenhower method and have that come up and be able to see immediately what that looks like. Now, I would add that it's not just the things that are not important but urgent. It's not just those things that we would delegate. I would say anything that is important that somebody else can do that we don't have to do ourselves, you can also delegate those. You can also delegate in some circumstances the important and urgent items if you know that they will get done, but you don't have to be the one that does them. But I do want to show you that this technique does work. If you want to start somewhere, just Google the Eisenhower method. It's a very effective method. I've done that. They have applications on your phone that will actually put those into that matrix. And the best thing about this whole thing is the stop doing or drop it box. Because if it's not urgent and not important, just don't do it. How much time do we typically spend doing those things that we don't belong doing? So the reason I'm telling you this is because the concept here is we need to stop doing key things as leaders if we want to be effective. And we need to understand that if we do delegate something, that it is okay to go follow up. So you don't have to have this fear of loss that you can never follow up with something. And hopefully that will enable us to realize that we need to delegate certain things, we need to plan certain things, and some things we just need to stop doing altogether. So there are a couple of books. You had to have known that I would recommend some books, but there's a book called The One Thing. There's another book that I would recommend anybody read called The Focal Point, and then another one that is called Essentialism. These three books are absolutely amazing. There are many others that focus on the same topics, but let me just show you just a couple of the things that I've learned from these books that tie into this concept. So from The One Thing, here are some myths. Myth number one, everything is equally important. You know, we've talked about in these podcasts, and I've heard great leaders say, if everything's important, then nothing is. Because if we don't focus, if we don't do the key things that we're supposed to be doing, then we're basically not effective and we will get average results. Myth number two, multitasking gets more done. That's not true. There is no such thing as multitasking. It's just quickly going from one thing to another and losing key, valuable time switching between those tasks because we've lost mental focus. So that's a myth. People that say they multitask, they're not multitasking. They're just going a lot slower and being a lot less productive. Okay, myth number three, only people with superhuman discipline succeed. Superhuman discipline is not something that exists. Discipline is an exhaustible resource. So we have to realize that if we're doing a whole bunch of different things and we're going to discipline ourselves through it, our way through it, that's not actually real. That just means we're spreading ourselves too thin. So the book Focal Point and these other couple of books that I've mentioned, they recommend that we do more of the right things and we stop doing the things that are not adding value that we don't belong doing. Again, going back to that comment that we should start doing the things that only we can do and should do, and stop doing the things that others can do and will do. Okay. And here's the principle and I've talked about the Pareto principle before, or the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the things that we do will bring about 80% of our return. We need to focus there because people are expecting from you, whether you're a team player, a leader, or whatever, people are expecting you to hold up your end of this deal, to stay at your station, to stand where you are and lift where you stand, and to cover your role and your responsibilities. And you can only do that if you have focus. So here's why we're talking about this today. Leaders delegate for two main reasons. They lack the time, the skill, or the other resources to do the job, or they wish to give someone else the growth opportunities that come from a particular responsibility and activity. On the other hand, many leaders do not delegate because they can't always rely on people to do the job the way they want it done, or it takes more time to show people how to do it than it does to do it themselves, or it is frustrating to have something delegated and then not have it done the right way at the right time, or sometimes delegated tasks involve more problems and time as people keep asking questions and complaining about the assignment. Basically, there's a feel of loss. There's a sense of control. There's a sense of certainty that people want because they're afraid that other people, can't do it, that it'll take more time, that it'll be frustrating, or that the delegated task will involve more problems and time because they'll have to coach other people. So these are the fears that people are dealing with. And there's a way to get past this, and we have to get past this. So let me just go on just a little bit of a preaching moment here. This is why it's important. I can't tell you how many, I can't count, but I can tell you that there's almost an infinite amount of times when I work with leaders, coach leaders, mentor leaders, and they are wanting to go to that next level of effectiveness. They want to be home for their families. They want to do the right things, but they say they just don't have enough time. They say, I just can't get it done. I just can't get my work done by the end of the day. I've got too much to do. And it just goes on and on and on. And there's a list of excuses, which I've been through before, so I'm not being critical, but there's a list of excuses of why they can't take their next step. The key here is to delegate. And it is not going against the value of humility to say that I personally, Jason Schroeder, have gotten into the habit to where I don't do anything that I don't have to do or the things that I shouldn't be doing. If somebody else can do it, if it can benefit their career, if they can learn from it, if they can do it, I typically delegate it and I work and train and I create standard systems, standard roles, standard teams, build teams to where I don't have to be relied on for everything. That is the key. I don't do anything I don't have to do. And it has brought me so much success on the job site or running multiple projects, which I do, or being over multiple departments and multiple things. If you delegate and develop people, here's what people think happens. They're like, oh, well, I stopped doing my work. I'm being not humble. I'm that leader now that just goes around and is fancy and earns a lot of money and just doesn't add that much value. That's not really what's happening. What's really happening is if you learn to delegate effectively, you are that leader that works through other people, that helps other people in their careers, that enables other people, that multiplies, that gets more done, that creates vision, that has more time for health, has more time for family, can affect and bless more people's lives. That's the real situation we're dealing with here. So here's my advice. Do not continue doing the things that you don't belong doing. And here are some tips and tricks that will help you. So you have to know that there is a difference between assignments, a project, and a scope or an area of work. So when you delegate an assignment, that could be a little thing. You could ask somebody to run a meeting, or you could ask somebody to cover the huddle, or you could ask somebody, one of your carpenters on site, to go build a set of steps. Now, some of those things you might want to follow up on, but others you might not need to follow up on those things. Those are assignments. It's very easy to delegate assignments. I think we're all used to doing that, but if you're not, it's a very good place to start. Delegating a project is a much different thing. If you're delegating a project, that has a sequence of activities, that has a phased implementation. They usually have timelines. you're going to have to stay with your people and work with them and follow up and continue to coach throughout the implementation of that delegated project. And that is totally appropriate. Also, a scope or an area of work. These are ongoing kind of evergreen things that you have tasked somebody with. These might go on for years, and absolutely 100% follow-up and coaching is required as you go through. So understanding this, I think, expands our mind and helps us to understand the fact that we have to follow up. So the current conditions, again, are that managers are held back by not delegating. They are hurting their families because they're spending too much time at work. They are hurting others' careers because they're doing everything themselves. And they are not sharing the joy of development and growth, and they are not leveraging the full strength of the team. So the solution is a step-by-step process, and I'll go through these right now. So fit the right persons to the right assignments, make it a challenge, make the delegated assignment interesting, or it can be a volunteer assignment. Everything can be turned into a crusade. Clarify your expectations, get a commitment from the person, provide ongoing training, follow through, and let go to a certain extent. So let me talk about these things really quickly. So the solution, fit the right person for the assignment or the volunteer situation. Some organizations will dictate what others will do or make assignments. Some organizations, and I prefer this, is where, hey, we have this issue. Who wants to volunteer for this? Who wants to take this project on? I personally like that style of leadership. But the bottom line is we have to make sure that the person taking on the assignment has the capacity, has the knowledge, has the potential to go step into that role or their assignment and grow into that and accomplish that task, and that it fits with their personality. So having the right people do the right things is key. And I keep going back to Jim Collins saying, the right people on the bus, the wrong people off, and the right people in the right seats. So we have to have the right people doing the right things. The second thing is, if something has been delegated or somebody has volunteered to take a delegated assignment, it can't just be boring. I'm not going to go over and say, hey, will you fill out my expense statements and expect the person doing that to feel fulfilled in their career or successful in their career. That gets boring. We need to create standard systems. We need to create networks of information to get some of those boring menial tasks done. Sometimes you'll have other people do it if that's their role and that's what they're supposed to be doing. But for the most part, when you delegate something, there needs to be a challenge. There needs to be a growth opportunity there, right? So make sure that that's there. Make sure that everything that you delegate, that can be like a little miniature crusade. And remember the fact that everyone needs to know how what they are doing is relevant to the organization. So make that clear. Also, with your clarity, make sure you clarify expectations. What does this look like? This is something that I don't typically do very well up until now, and I will do well with this from now on, is clarifying expectations. A lot of times I have a vision for something in my head, and I just expect people to know what it is. But I need to draw a picture. I need to spell it out, or I need to have a long phone conversation. Or I need to say, like, the vision for this would be, or the outcome for this would be, or the results for this would be, ... and explain that so that there's an end goal. Like Stephen Covey used to say, begin with the end in mind. And if we do that, then people will have the right vision to accomplish what is expected. And I do have to say that most of the current leadership philosophies in our industry center around letting people know what the expectations are, letting people know what the end goal is. And once they know what the end goal is, you enable them, you get out of their way, you provide the resources and the materials and the training and the motivation to go accomplish it. And that is key. So like the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world and the Netflixes of the world, they have a clarified corporate structure, corporate objectives, and mission statement and vision for the company, and then they go enable everybody to work towards that goal. And that, in effect, is really excellent delegation because you have a synchrony and alignment of the entire organization heading in the same direction. So once you have a team or a person or somebody who's volunteered for an assignment actually understand the expectations, then you need to get a commitment. Do you have the resources? Does this fit with your personal work-life blend? Do you have the right infrastructure? Do you have the right support systems? Do you have the right technology? Do you have the right training? And ask those questions. So if somebody's usually about saying yes, and you have even a little bit of a doubt, you say, okay, no, really, like, do you have the time to do that? You have all these other projects. There's nothing wrong with actually digging deep and having a conversation and getting a real commitment. We learn in negotiation techniques that there are different types of yeses. There's the false yes that nobody will ever, follow through with. Then there are other yeses that are, kind of a maybe yes. Then there's the yes, which is I commit to this. You have to get to a real yes. So really dig deep and make sure you're getting a commitment there. Now, here's where we typically go wrong. Usually at this point, leaders just sign off. They go away. Hey, they're responsible for it. That's not my fault. I told them to do it. I said this. We hear this in construction all the time. I talked to them. I told them. I addressed this. I sent an email. I don't care about those things. I care, did we make sure that it got done? So the next step is to provide ongoing training, to provide ongoing follow-through, and to let go of our perceived expectations of what the results should look like. You can continue coaching, you can continue training, but if it's not perfect to your standards, you got to let go of that a little bit and accept people's best efforts. So as soon as you've gotten a commitment, you will continue to coach, to follow up. Hey, how you doing with that? Do you need anything else from me on that? Or if you see metrics, hey, I saw that metric for that one project isn't looking too good. What support do you need? Do we need to all dive in? And have a way to define ongoing success and have a way to step in with ongoing coaching. There is nothing wrong with that. People that don't want the ongoing coaching, the ongoing follow-through, are typically just not accountable people. And they will call leaders, dynamic leaders, micromanagers, because they just don't like somebody peering into their world. Personally, if I'm doing an assignment and somebody's like, hey, how's that going? I'm fine to provide results. I'm fine to say, hey, here's where I am with that. Hey, here are our current results. We're on a 2-year journey or 1-year journey or 1-month journey. Here's where I am with that. And we have to get into that transparent, open, and integrated environment and be willing to hold each other accountable, right? So the let go piece isn't let go and forget about it like I did with those floor flatness tests and results. It's a let go of, hey, let go of complete control and let that person work in their own style and coach them to work in their own style. Coach them to work with their own capabilities, coach them to work with their own strengths, and follow through and provide that support, but let them do it and let go of the control, but very much keep a hold of your responsibility of coaching, keep a hold of your responsibility of training, keep a hold of your responsibility to be a mentor and a manager, keep a hold of your interest and your desire for that person to succeed, but let go of the control. Keep what you should keep and let go of what you should let go of, and let people succeed and accept their best efforts. So I hope this has been helpful. The tips and tricks for these are to, make sure that you don't release people from their callings, from their assignments. I once heard a very wise person say, if you tell me to go do something and then you secretly behind the scenes just go do it anyway, you've released me from my calling. You've released me from my assignment. But if you follow through and ask me how it's going, that's totally fine. If you coach me on how I should be doing it, that's totally fine. If you ask me how it's going, that's totally fine. If you continue to work through me and with me, that's totally fine. But if you go around me and do it without me, you've just released me from my role. You've just released me from my calling. You've just released me from my assignment, from my position. And now I'm ineffective. Managers that go and step in and do lower level work and control everything, and they don't do that mentoring and that coaching, that leading, will always cause organizational dysfunction and unhealth. The other thing is, some things you just might need to forget. Like if I say, hey, you should write that down, and the topic was, hey, replace that sign, I might just need to not remember that myself. If I write down the hundreds of things, the little things that I told people in a day, I'm going to die of a stroke or a heart attack. I need to be able to triage the important things versus the things that aren't so important, and remember the things that are important, and make sure that I understand what things I should be coaching for and what things I should follow up for. One leader put it to me in a very good way. If you have a bunch of spinning plates, I'm just imagining like a circus clown here, but if I have a bunch of spinning plates on sticks, right? And I've got them all spinning. I need to know which ones I'm not willing to let fall. One or two of them might fall, but I need to know which ones I'm not going to let fall. Now, that analogy might not help you, or you could also say, I need to know which balls in the air I can't drop. However you want to look at it, you need to know which things are important, where you should follow up and continue to coach and to continue to change and continue to train, and what things you might just want to forget and not write down yourself. The other thing is create standard systems. Always make sure that when you're delegating, that those will come up on a team meeting agenda, or it might come up on a metric, or it might come back up in a meeting, or it might come up on a standard phone call, or it might come up on a to-do list for yourself, or it might come up on your calendar. If you have to remember things in coach, and if you have to make sure that you need to, follow up on certain things, make sure you write it down. I can personally tell you that I focus on about 6 people to coach and mentor them all the time. And I wrote that on the to-do list. And I have that as a part of my leader standard work. And once a month, I call and check in and make sure they're doing well. And I have an intentional back and forth coaching moment. They coach me, I coach them. And we make that connection intentionally. We have to have human systems that reinforce this concept of delegation. And I do want to close this out by saying one more time, you will not be as effective as you can be if you don't start to delegate. You will not develop other people like you could be if you don't start to delegate. You will not develop other people's careers unless you start to delegate. If you're a foreman, you're not going to develop your workers unless you delegate. If you're a field engineer, you're not going to be able to get your job done and QC everything and do lift drawings if you don't delegate. If you're superintendent, you'll burn out within a year if you don't start to learn to delegate. If you want to go from an assistant superintendent or a superintendent to a senior superintendent or a general superintendent, delegation is key. It's probably one of the most urgent things that you need to learn and practice. And if you're going to be a director, an executive, a leader, a business owner, or anything, you're never going to be as successful as you could be unless you start to realize that you have to do it with other people and you can't take credit for everything. You have to delegate and you have to let people get credit. I remember a quote that said, you can go as far as you want in your career or in life as long as you don't care who gets the credit. And that's really the key here. So please delegate. Please go practice. And if you're one of those persons, and I'm not criticizing you because I've been there, if you're one of those persons that doesn't get home on time, if you're one of those persons that isn't leveraging the team, if you're one of those persons that's holding other people back, if you're one of those persons that wants to live a more essential life, a more focused life, focused on the right things, if you want to start doing the right things and stop doing the wrong things, then please take this challenge to go intentionally start delegating. Use the Eisenhower method. Use your own method. Triage your to-do list. Start crossing things off. And here's basically what I want to close out with. I don't do anything I don't have to do. And that you can call me lazy, you can call me not humble, you can call me whatever, but I don't do any of those things because I know that it will hinder my effectiveness. And the default for me is, I'm not going to do it unless I have to do it. My default is not, I'm going to do it unless I don't have to. Switch your paradigm to, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to say no to this unless you know you have to do it. It would add value to your team. It's needed for you to do on your team, or you need to do it as a leader, as a team player, as a manager, or as a direct report. That's the key. If you switch your mindset, then you can go into this mode of effectiveness, start doing the 20% of the things that will bring the 80% of your return, and you can live a remarkable life. So the vision for this is that people are enabled around you. They get opportunities around you. You delegate or let people volunteer for things that will help their next career level. You bring workers along with you. You are not needed all the time because you effectively delegate. You can lead a good team of people. You create standard systems. You can do more and be more effective. And we can do more to change this industry, to elevate workers, to respect workers, to get home on time for our families, to take care of our health, and make construction a remarkable environment. Because the bottom line is, you can work as many hours as you want in construction. You could work every waking hour and never get caught up. And so the only way we're going to get there is if we force ourselves to work under 55 hours. And here's the key. I don't believe any leader is ever going to force themselves to learn how to delegate and to create standard work and to learn how to schedule and to create organizational systems, personal organization systems, unless you lower the water level. That's a lean concept saying lower the water level, remove the roadblocks. Don't raise the water level, meaning the money, the resources, the manpower and everything, and just cruise past your roadblocks. Lower the water level and remove the roadblocks. And so in our personal life, if we say, hey, I'm working 50, 55 hours and I'm going home at this time, it will force you to delegate. It will force you to create leader standard work. It will force you to become a better leader. It will force you to have a personal organization system. It will force you to be more essential. It will force you to cross things off your to-do list and say, I'm just not going to do it. It will force you to leave work for the next day. It will force you to go be more effective as a leader. And so that's the challenge. I hope this helps. Until we meet again, please go take that challenge. Please go take that challenge, lower the water level, and start to practice delegation in incremental steps, and you will get used to it as long as you have a need, and that need is to not work too many hours and to leverage the strength of your team. On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.